Good. Welcome to another lesson. Today we're going to discuss a very important lesson, which is active and passive voice. So we're going to look at the definition so that you can understand better. What do we call active voice? Active voice means that a sentence has a subject that acts upon its verb. For example, the dog kills the cat. Now get this example now. The dog killed the cat. So this sentence is in active voice. How? Because the subject acts upon its verb. Where is the subject? It's the dog. What does it do? It kills. So where's the verb? Kill. Who does the killing? The dog. So here we understand that the subject acts upon its verb. So in this case, we call them an active voice. Other example is the driver hit the donkey on the road. Okay, so here also, this is the subject, the driver, and it acts upon its subject, its verb. Where is the verb? Hit. This is the driver that did something. What did the driver do? He hit. So you can see this is the subject which acts upon its verb. Now, what is passive voice now? Passive voice means that a subject is a recipient of a verb's action. Now, let's get this. If you look at the active voice, the subject does the action. But in a passive voice, the subject receives the action. Let's see. The cat was killed by the dog. Is that good? Now, compare the two sentences. The dog killed the cat, and the cat was killed by the dog. Now, if you look at sentence 1, let's take it, and this sentence 2. Here, the dog is the subject, and cat is the object. But if we look at sentence 2, cat is the subject and dog becomes the object. So we say this sentence is in passive voice. Why? Because the subject is the recipient of a verb's action. What is the actions of the verb? Kill. Who receives it? The subject. Or the subject here, the cat. So we say the cat was killed by the dog. Something happened in the sentence. What is that? Killing. Who receives the killing? The cat, which is the subject. Now, who does the killing? It's the dog here. But if you look at it in active voice, the subject does it, and the object here receives it. We said the dog killed the cat, and the cat was killed by the dog. Here, object receives the action, and here, subject receives the action. So we move on. The donkey was hit by the driver on the road. Now let's take sentence 2, and we also take this other one. The donkey was hit by the driver on the road. Where's the subject in this sentence is the donkey, and it receives the action. But if you look at this one, the driver hit the donkey. Now donkey here is object, and it receives the action. So in a passive voice, the subject receives the action, and in an active voice, the object receives the action. So let's move on. We look at more examples. The active voice describes a sentence where the subject performs the action stated by the verb. Let's get this. The teacher gave the students assignment. So let's look at the definition of. The active voice describes a sentence where the subject performs the action stated by the verb. Now what do? We identify the subject, which is this, and we identify the verb. All right? Where is the subject? The teacher. Now our definition says, in an active voice, the active voice describes a sentence where the subject performs the action. Where is the subject? The teacher. And the teacher here performed an action. What is the action he gave? That's what we mean. The subject performed the action stated by the verb. That is, it has a clear subject plus verb plus an object. Now let's move on. Here we have the teacher as the subject, gave verb. The student, we call this indirect object. And assignment, we call it direct object. This is indirect object. So what the teacher actually gives is assignment. To who? The students. So that the sentence could have been, the teacher gave assignment. So in that case, you have subject, verb, and object. As you can see them there, that is, it has a clear subject, which is the teacher, a clear verb, give, and plus an object, which is assignment. So we move on to the other example. Omar did the work well. We get it? Omar did the work well. Okay, here Omar is our subject. Did is our verb, and the work is the object. Because the subject does the action. What did he do? He did. What did he do? A work. So this is the object. So we have verb and we also have object. Number 3, the cat chased the rat. A clear subject is the cat, which is the doer of the action of the verb. Where is the verb? Chase. And where is the object? The rat. Here is the cat. Functioning as subject, it did something. What the cat did, that's what we call a verb. Who receives the action, that's what they call the object. Now this is the cat, subject. The cat did something. What did it do? It chased. Who receives it? The rat. So the rat here becomes the object. So we said Fatu cooked lunch for the family. The clear subject there is Fatu. What did she do? She cooked. What did she cook? Lunch. So you can see Fatu becomes the subject, cook the verb, and lunch the object. Number 5, she helped the students to pass exam. So our subject there now, we look at it, is pronouns. It's no more noun here. But as you know, pronouns replaces a noun in a sentence. What a noun can do in a sentence, pronoun can do the same thing. So here we say help the students to pass their exam. So the clear subject here is she. And the verb help, object, student. What makes this a subject? It comes before the verb, and it also does the action of the verb. So what makes this one an object? It came after the verb and received the action of the verb done by the subject. Now look at this. She did something. What did she do? help. Who received the help? The students. So obviously students become the object. So in an active voice, you have a subject, a verb, and object. And the subject is the doer of the action, and the object is the receiver of the action. Unlike a passive voice where the subject is the receiver of the action. We move on. With a passive voice, the subject is acted upon by the verb. That is, the subject is no longer performing the action of the verb. Rather, it is being acted upon by the verb. That is to say that the subject does not actually perform the action. Put another way, the subject of a sentence in the passive voice is no longer the doer, all right, of the action, but recipient of the action. Now, get this example. The assignment was given by the teacher. Now, this assignment didn't do anything. Instead, it receives because it is in a passive voice. So we look at the other one. The work was well done by Omar. The work was well done by Omar. So we look at this. This is the subject. It didn't do anything. But look at this again. Omar did the work. Here the subject did something because it's an active voice. Here the subject didn't do anything because it is a passive voice. So the same thing continues. The rat was chased by the cat. So when we say this, the rat was chased by the cat. Here the subject didn't do anything. But when you say the cat chased the rat, here the subject does something. What did the subject do? It chased. But when we say the rat was chased, remember this is the subject and this is your verb in the sentence. So here the subject didn't do anything because it's in the passive voice. So when you have sentences in a passive voice, the subject doesn't do anything. The subject can only be a doer of the action in an active voice. But in a passive voice sentences, the subject don't do anything. So we look at the other examples. The lunch was cooked for the family by Fatu. Lunch as the subject didn't perform any action. And number 5, the students were helped to pass exams by her. Here the students didn't do anything. But if you use the sentence in an active voice where you said she helped the students, in that case the subject does something. But when you say the students were helped, there the subject didn't do anything. So we move on. Good. So here are some examples in a tabular form: active voice sentences and passive voice sentences. I helped the boys. The boys were helped by me. Now compare the two examples that you have. I helped the boys. Then we have the boys were helped by me or by myself anyhow. So we move on. We look at this. This is the subject. It is the doer of the action. What is the action? Help. Because this is an active voice sentence. The subject always perform an action. The boys were helped. This is the subject. And here, the subject didn't do anything because it is in a passive voice. All right? So we continue. We have more examples. Omar slaughtered the ram. Omar is the subject, doer of the action. What did he do? He slaughtered. What did he slaughter? The ram, which is the object. But when we come here, the ram was slaughtered by Omar. Now you can see here, in a passive voice, the object turns to be the subject of the sentence. But when it turns to be the subject of the sentence, it will not perform any action compared to when it is in an active voice. So here the ram was slaughtered by Omar. The ram didn't do anything. But when you say Omar slaughtered the ram, here the subject does something. What did he do? He slaughtered. Who received the slaughter? The ram. We move on. Aisha laundered the clothes. Aisha is the subject. He did something. What did she do? She laundered. What did she launder? The clothes. So clothes become the object. Now in a passive voice, always take it like this. Your object becomes the subject. Now in this sentence, the clothes is the object. Now if you want to change it into a passive voice, let the object becomes the subject. So what do you say? The clothes were laundered by Aisha. So we have more example. He chopped the wood into tiny pieces. The wood was chopped into tiny pieces by him. Mr. Yang taught the students Concord. The students were taught Concord by Mr. Yang. We have number, Harry ate 6 shrimps at dinner. Here we have at dinner, 6 shrimps were eaten by Harry. Now, beautiful giraffes roam the savannah. We say the savannah is roamed by beautiful giraffes. As I told you, in a passive voice, the object becomes the subject. Like as you can see, beautiful giraffes are the subject, the verb there is roam, and the savannah is the object. Now in a passive voice, what do you say? The savannah is roamed by beautiful giraffe. Now here, the object becomes the subject of the verb. But take note, when the object becomes the subject in a passive voice, that subject does not perform any action. So a subject can only perform an action in an active voice. We move on. Sue changed the flat tire. We said the flat tire was changed by Sue. Mom read the novel in one day. The novel was read by Mom in one day. So here, look at it. Mom read the novel. What is the object there? The novel. Now, when you want to change this sentence into passive, what do? The object should become the subject. Therefore, you say the novel was read by Mom in one day. Now, the company requires staff to watch a safety video every year. Now here, the object is staff. So if you want to change this active to passive, now the object now will become the subject. Therefore you say the staff are required by the company to watch a safety video every year. We move on. Good. More examples here. Tom painted the entire house. What is the object? The entire house. Because it comes after the verb, it receives the action. Now in a passive voice, what do? The object becomes the subject. Now instead of the entire house came in last in the sentence, it should now begin the sentence. We say the entire house was painted by Tom. So you can see in an active voice, Tom begins the sentence. But in a passive voice, Tom ends the sentence. In an active voice, the entire house ends the sentence, but in a passive voice, the entire house begins the sentence. So the teacher always answers the student's question. The student's questions are always answered by the teacher. Now look at the active voice, the teacher comes at the beginning of the sentence. And questions come at the end of the sentence. So in a passive voice now it changed. The students' questions were always answered by the teacher. The 2 kings are signing the treaty. So here we said the treaty is being signed by the 2 kings. So you can see treaty comes last in the active, but in the passive, utility comes first. Now, the cleaning crew vacuums and dusts the office every night. So here we said every night the office is vacuumed and dusted by the cleaning crew. Larry generously donated money to the homeless shelter. Money was generously donated to the homeless shelter by Larry. So you can see Larry came at the beginning of the sentence in an active, and of course in a passive voice it came in the last. So we have the wedding planner is making all the reservations. We said all the reservations have been made by the wedding planner. So easy to understand. In an active, the subject comes first and the object comes last. But in a passive, the object comes first. We said all the reservations have been made by the wedding planner. So you can see now here in a passive voice, what you have as object in your active now becomes the subject in a passive voice. What you have as your object in an active voice becomes the subject in a passive voice. That's why I said the wedding planner is making all the reservations. Now the reservation is the object. In a passive voice, it will turn to be the subject. Therefore you say all the reservations have been made by the wedding planner. Susan will bake 2 dozen cupcakes for the bake sale. 2 dozen of cupcakes will be baked by Susan for the bake sale. So we move on. Good. Now we summarize our lessons. We said active voice means that a sentence has a subject that acts upon its verb. Passive voice means that a subject is a recipient of a verb's action. So that's it for today. But before we end our lesson, let us do some exercise and see if you understand the lesson. So we move on. Exercise 1. After each sentence, a bracket is given. In the bracket, write active voice if the sentence is in active voice. Write passive voice if the sentence is in passive voice. Now, after each sentence, there is bracket. Now, in the bracket, indicate there active if the sentence is in active voice. Or you indicate passive if the sentence is in passive voice. So we move on. The teacher finished the work. Is this sentence active or passive? Now, how do you know that it is an active? You know that it is an active if the subject is the doer of the action. Once you realize that the subject is the doer of the action, then that sentence is active. But if you realize that the subject didn't do any action, that sentence is what? Passive. Now let's get this. The teacher finished the work. Did the teacher do any work here? If it is yes, then it's active. If it is no, then it's what? Passive. We move on. Number 2. The monkey was killed by the hunter. Where is the subject, the monkey? Didn't do anything. If it is yes, it's active. If it is no, it's what? Passive. Now read the rest. The food was eaten by the boy. The baby eats the banana. My uncle sent me a letter. We called the teacher to come. Baba painted the wall. She watered the garden. I measured the football field. I built this new house. So indicate if the sentence is active in the bracket or is passive in the bracket. Meaning if the sentence is in an active voice, put it in the bracket. If the sentence in a passive voice, put it in a bracket. And how do you know that? As I told you, when the subject does something, then the sentence is active. When the subject does not do anything, then the sentence is what? Passive. So let's move on and we see the correction. Now you can compare this work to your work. Number 1, the teacher finished the work. This sentence is in active voice. Why? Because the teacher is the doer of the action. What is the action? Finish. Number 2, the monkey was killed by the hunter. It's a passive voice because here the subject didn't do anything. The monkey was killed by the hunter. What did the monkey do in this sentence? Nothing, absolutely. Good. So we said the food was eaten by the boy. Did the subject perform any action here? No. Now we look at number 4. The baby eats the banana. In active voice. Why? Because here the baby is the subject, performs an action. Is the doer of the action. What is the action? Eat. We move on. My uncle sent me a letter. An active. Why is it an active? Because the subject does something. What did the subject do? The subject sent. All right. Number 6. We called the teacher to come. Active voice. The subject is there. We. What action? Called. Number 7. Baba painted the wall. Active voice. All right. How do we know? Because the subject Baba is the doer of the action. What is the action? Painted. Now, she watered the garden. The same thing active because the subject performed an action. What is the action? She watered. Number 10, I measured the football field. An active voice because the subject performed an action. Number 10, I built this new house. The same thing. So you can see from number 1 to 10, you have only 2 passive voice sentences. The rest, they are all active voice. So if you do them well, bravo to yourself. If you have some mistake, correct your work. And I wish you all the best. Thank you very much.